Don't compare yourself with anyone in this world. If you do so, you are insulting yourself. If you are born poor, it's not your mistake, but if you die poor, it's your mistake. We make the future sustainable when we invest in the poor, not when we insist on their suffering. Treatment without prevention is simply unsustainable. Discrimination has a lot of layers that make it tough for minorities to get a leg up. The most amazing philanthropists are people who are actually making a significant sacrifice. Legacy is a stupid thing. I don't want a legacy. Like my friend Warren Buffett, I feel particularly lucky to do something every day that I love to do. He calls it tap dancing to work. Money has no utility to me beyond a certain point. Be nice to nerds. Chances are you'll end up working for one. I choose a lazy person to do a hard job. Because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. If you can't make it good, at least make it look good. Your most unhappy customers are your greatest source of learning. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10 years. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. I really had a lot of dreams when I was a kid, and I think a great deal of that grew out of the fact that I had a chance to read a lot. If you give people tools, and they use their natural abilities and their curiosity, they will develop things in ways that will surprise you very much beyond what you might have expected. I agree with people like Richard Dawkins that mankind felt the need for creation myths. Before we really began to understand disease and the weather and things like that, we sought false explanations for them. Now science has filled in some of the realm, not all, that religion used to fill. In terms of doing things, I take a fairly scientific approach to why things happen and how they happen. I don't know if there's a God or not. As we look ahead into the next century, leaders will be those who empower others. DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created. Measuring programming progress by lines of code is like measuring aircraft building progress by weight. Computers are great because when you're working with them you get immediate results that let you know if your program works. It's feedback you don't get from many other things. Our success has really been based on partnerships from the very beginning. The vision is really about empowering workers, giving them all the information about what's going on so they can do a lot more than they've done in the past. It's fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure. Power comes not from knowledge kept but from knowledge shared. I believe that if you show people the problems and you show them the solutions, they will be moved to act. So it's an absolute lie that has killed thousands of kids. Because the mothers who heard that lie, many of them didn't have their kids take either pertussis or measles vaccine, and their children are dead today. And so the people who go and engage in those anti-vaccine efforts, they kill children. It's a very sad thing, because these vaccines are important. Some people may call me a nerd. I claim the label with pride. Technology is just a tool. In terms of getting the kids working together and motivating them, the teacher is the most important. The cruel injustice is that even though the world's poor are doing essentially nothing to cause climate change, they're going to suffer the most from it. Like almost everyone who uses email, I receive a ton of spam every day. Much of it offers to help me get out of debt or get rich quick. It would be funny if it weren't so exciting. To sum up, we need to accomplish something gigantic we have never done before, much faster than we have ever done anything similar. Making things, cement, steel, plastic, 31% plugging in, electricity, 27% growing things, plants, animals, 19% getting around, planes, trucks, cargo ships, 16% keeping warm and cool, heating, cooling, refrigeration, 7%. The climate is like a bathtub that's slowly filling up with water. Even if we slow the flow of water to a trickle, the tub will eventually fill up and water will come spilling out onto the floor. That's the disaster we have to prevent. Setting a goal to only reduce our emissions, but not eliminate them, won't do it. There's no magic line between an application and an operating system that some bureaucrat in Washington should draw. It's like saying that as of 1932, cars didn't have radios in them, so they should never have radios in them. I studied everything but never topped, but today the toppers of the best universities are my employees. Whatever other resources you may have, you can always use your voice and your vote to effect change. Remember that we need to find solutions for all 5 activities that emissions come from: making things, plugging in, growing things, getting around, and keeping cool and warm. But I hope you'll spend more time and energy supporting whatever you're in favor of than opposing whatever you're against. There are 2 numbers you need to know about climate change. The first is 51 billion. The other is 0. 51 billion is how many tons of greenhouse gases the world typically adds to the atmosphere every year. In other words, by mid-century, climate change could be just as deadly as COVID-19, and by 2100 it could be 5 times as deadly. It may sound old-fashioned, but letters and phone calls to your elected officials can have a real impact. Business is a money game with few rules and a lot of risk. In my view, investing in public libraries is an investment in the nation's future. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a day, and overestimate what they can accomplish in a year. The problem of overgeneration in the summer and undergeneration in the winter. But we can't solve a problem like climate change without an honest accounting of how much we need to do and what obstacles we need to overcome. It's the main thing I do in my life. I read and I chew glasses. That's my job. Around the world, there are roughly 1 billion cattle raised for beef and dairy. The methane they burp and fart out every year has the same warming effect as 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide, accounting for about 4% of all global emissions. About half of poop-related emissions come from pig manure, and the rest from cow manure. There's so much animal poop that it's actually the second biggest cause of emissions in agriculture, behind enteric fermentation. If we can spread the improved breeds and best practices more broadly, especially cross-breeding African cows to be more productive and making higher quality feed available and affordable, it'll reduce emissions and help poor farmers earn more money. Although transportation isn't the biggest cause of emissions worldwide, it is number 1 in the United States, and it has been for a few years now, just ahead of making electricity. We Americans drive and fly a lot. How quickly do we need to get to 0? Science tells us that in order to avoid a climate catastrophe, rich countries should reach net zero emissions by 2050. You've probably heard people say we can decarbonize deeply even sooner, by 2030. Just as our ambitions have been driven by an appreciation for climate science, any practical plan for reducing emissions has to be driven by other disciplines: physics, chemistry, biology, engineering, political science, economics, finance, and more. The vision is about empowering workers, giving them all the information about what's going on so they can do a lot more than they've done in the past. The world needs to provide more energy so the poorest can thrive, but we need to provide that energy without releasing any more greenhouse gases. As the world eats more meat, it accelerates the deforestation in Latin America. More burgers anywhere mean fewer trees there. I'm also a technophile. Show me a problem, and I'll look for technology to fix it. I love the fact that one of history's greatest heroes had a job title, agronomist, that most of us have never even heard of.